Ikena was a quiet, hard-working young man from Imo State who never caused trouble for anyone. After his mother passed away, he had no choice but to move in with his extended family. He arrived with a small bag and a hopeful heart, thinking he would finally find comfort among his relatives. But from the first week, he realized life in that house would never feel like home. His aunt, Madame Rosaline, a woman who loved control and respect more than kindness, treated him like an outsider. She rarely looked at him without irritation in her eyes. Whenever he entered a room, her voice followed him like a shadow. "You're not one of us. Don't forget you're here because of pity." Her words cut deeper than she knew. She would scold him for the smallest things, blame him for problems he didn't cause, and make him feel like every breath he took in that house was a disturbance. During meals, she served him last. During family discussions, she pretended he didn't exist. Sometimes she even introduced him to visitors as someone we're just helping, as if he didn't have a name. Everyone else in the family respected the ancestral house, a massive building passed down for generations, but Ikena never felt its warmth. While others saw it as a symbol of pride, he saw it as a place where he was constantly reminded of his loneliness. He spent most nights staring at the ceiling, wondering why life always seemed harder for him than for others his age. But despite all the rejection, Ikena refused to let bitterness grow in his heart. He cleaned the compound every morning, helped his cousins with schoolwork, and tried to stay out of trouble. He kept telling himself that one day things would change, and he would build a life that no one could look down on. Deep inside, he carried a quiet determination, a fire that no insult could put out. Even when Madame Rosaline's voice rose above everyone else's, reminding him he wasn't part of the family, he held on to the belief that his story wasn't going to end in that house. He believed he would rise, even if no one else believed in him. The day of the family event was supposed to be a happy one. Relatives from different cities arrived, the compound was decorated, and everyone was dressed in their best clothes. Ikena tried to stay in the background, helping set up chairs and serving drinks. He didn't want any trouble, he just wanted to blend in quietly. When the ceremony began, he found an empty seat at the corner of the gathering. He sat down gently, hoping no one would notice him. But Madame Rosaline noticed immediately. In front of all the visitors, she marched toward him with a sharp, angry expression. Without warning, her voice exploded through the compound. "You're not part of this family. Don't sit here." The entire crowd froze. The music stopped. People looked away, pretending not to hear, while others stared at Ikena with pity. He felt his ears burn as the shame washed over him. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He simply stood up and walked away slowly, keeping his head down so no one would see the tears forming in his eyes. He slipped behind the house until the noise faded. His chest felt tight, but he kept swallowing his pain, trying not to break down. That night, when everyone else was laughing inside, he sat alone in the small room they had given him. The humiliation replayed in his mind like a movie he couldn't pause. But what hurt him the most wasn't the shouting. It was the message behind it. He finally understood that no matter how hard he tried, they never planned to see him as family. When he lay on his thin mattress, he cried quietly into his pillow. Not because of the embarrassment, but because he realized he had no one in the world who truly cared about him. He felt like a shadow in a house full of people. In that moment of deep loneliness, something changed inside him. The pain became fuel. The rejection became a push. He decided he couldn't stay there anymore. He couldn't keep living where he was constantly reminded he didn't belong. That night became the turning point. The moment he chose to leave and build a life far away from the people who broke his spirit. Before sunrise, Ikena quietly packed his few belongings into a small bag. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving. He just placed his certificates carefully inside, took one last look at the house that never felt like home, and stepped out through the back gate. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but he knew he needed to start over somewhere far away. With the little money he had saved from doing small chores, he boarded a bus to Port Harcourt, hoping the city would give him a chance his family never did. When he arrived, the noise, heat, and rush of people overwhelmed him, but he forced himself to stay strong. He walked around the streets looking for work until he found a petrol station that needed attendance. The manager gave him a chance, and Ikena accepted the job immediately. It wasn't the life he dreamed of, but it was honest work, and he was grateful. He stood for long hours in the sun, greeting customers with a smile even when his legs ached. Many days he worked double shifts just to earn a little extra. His living conditions were harsh. He rented a small room in a rundown building where the ceiling leaked whenever it rained. Sometimes he woke up at night to move his mattress away from dripping water. The room was hot during the day, cold at night, and had barely enough space for his bag and a thin mattress. But he never complained. He reminded himself that even this was better than staying where he was unwanted. Despite the loneliness and poverty pressing on him, he refused to give up on his dreams. Every night after work, he borrowed a small phone from a coworker or used the cybercafe near the station. He watched videos about online business, repairs, and digital skills. He read free articles about entrepreneurship and how people started from nothing and built something meaningful. The more he learned, the more hope grew in his heart. He believed that if others could rise, he could too. Even when his stomach was empty or his body felt weak, he kept studying. Those late-night learning sessions became his escape, his motivation, and his quiet promise to himself that one day he would change his life forever. One afternoon at the petrol station, Ikenna saw his coworker Chibuzo repairing a damaged phone behind the counter. Curious, he asked how he learned it. Chibuzo laughed and told him it was a simple skill but a useful one. Seeing Ikenna's interest, he began teaching him after their shifts. Every evening, the two of them sat behind the station with old phones and broken chargers, practicing how to open, fix, and reassemble them. Ikenna learned quickly. His hands were steady, and he had a natural patience that made the work easier. Soon, word spread among the workers that Ikenna could fix small phone issues. During his break, customers would approach him timidly, asking if he could check their devices. He charged very little at first, sometimes even doing it for free just to build trust. But people loved how honest he was. He never overcharged, never lied, and always explained what he was repairing. If a phone didn't need fixing, he said it plainly. Because of that, customers kept returning, bringing their friends and family along. Within a few months, he earned more from repairs than from his actual job. He saved every naira carefully, cutting down on food and transport just to gather enough money. Finally, he rented a small kiosk near the busy junction. It was tiny, just a wooden structure with a metal roof, but to him, it felt like a step toward the future he had been dreaming of. He painted the kiosk himself and arranged his tools neatly on a small table. Customers loved the way he worked. He returned phones faster than expected, cleaned each device before handing it back, and always treated people with respect. His gentle nature and neat repairs made people trust him even more. Soon, long queues formed outside his little kiosk, especially on weekends. Mothers, students, drivers, market women. Everyone wanted to fix their phones at his shop. It didn't take long before people stopped calling him that boy from the petrol station. They started calling him Engineer Ikenna, a name that made him smile every time he heard it. For the first time in his life, he felt valued. He felt seen. And he knew this was only the beginning of something much bigger waiting for him. As the months passed, Ikenna's small kiosk became too crowded for the number of customers coming every day. People sometimes waited under the sun for hours just to have him check their phones. He knew it was time to grow. With the money he had saved, he rented a bigger shop along a busy road. The new place had enough space for a workbench, chairs for customers, and shelves for tools. When he opened the doors on the first day, he felt a wave of pride. He had built this with his own hands. Not long after, young boys from the neighborhood began hanging around his shop, watching him work. Some of them had no jobs and no direction in life. Instead of chasing them away, Ikenna invited them in and started showing them simple repair techniques. He taught them patiently, step by step, just like Chibuzo once taught him. Soon, he had a small group of trainees who came every morning to learn. Many of them later began earning money by fixing phones in their own areas. Seeing them succeed gave him joy. With the growing number of customers, Ikenna realized people also needed chargers, earphones, power banks, and cases. He saved up again and opened a small gadget accessories store right beside the repair shop. It was bright, organized, and full of affordable items that customers loved. People now came to him not just to fix their devices but to shop as well. His name became well known around the community. Everything changed the day a popular influencer walked into his shop with a broken tablet. Ikenna repaired it perfectly and didn't try to overcharge her. She loved his honesty and posted about him on social media. Within hours, the post went viral. His shop became crowded with new customers who had seen the video online. Some came from faraway towns just to meet the honest technician. Soon, tech brands started reaching out to him. They offered partnerships, discounts, and sponsorships because they wanted their products associated with his growing reputation. Every month, his income increased and opportunities opened for expansion. But through it all, Ikenna stayed humble. He still greeted every customer warmly, still trained youths for free, and still repaired devices with the same careful hands he started with. Success didn't change his heart. It only made him more determined to help others rise with him. With his repair shop and accessories store running smoothly, Ikenna began thinking bigger. He noticed many customers complaining about how expensive phones and gadgets were, especially good quality ones. That gave him an idea. He started researching how to import affordable but reliable devices directly from manufacturers in China. Every night after closing his shop, he sat with his laptop, watching videos, reading guides, and chatting with suppliers online. It took weeks of comparing prices, negotiating deals, and checking reviews before he finally made his first small order. When the shipment arrived, he was nervous, but the products turned out to be better than he expected. His customers loved the quality, and the prices were far lower than what they found in big stores. The gadgets sold out faster than he imagined. That success encouraged him to take a bigger step. He created his own mini-tech brand and named it Ikenna Tech Hub. He designed simple packaging, added instructions, and made sure every product met the standard he wanted his name to represent. Word spread quickly. People loved that a young Nigerian was offering devices that were both affordable and trustworthy. His brand started gaining attention across eastern Nigeria. Shops in Owerri, Aba, and Enugu began placing bulk orders. Market traders called daily asking for supplies. Delivery riders lined up outside his shop to pick up packages for customers in different states. It felt unreal, but Ikenna handled everything with focus and discipline. Soon, his business grew beyond what one shop could handle. He opened a branch in Owerri, then another in Aba, and later in Enugu. Each branch created more jobs for young people, many of whom had once been trainees at his first shop. Customers trusted his brand because they trusted him. He didn't cut corners, and he didn't let success make him proud or careless. As the brand expanded, investors began reaching out. Some wanted to partner, others offered to fund new branches. People who once overlooked him now admired him. In just 2 years, Ikenna transformed from a petrol station attendant into one of the most respected young tech entrepreneurs in the region. Every time he looked at his growing empire, he remembered the nights he studied in a leaking room and smiled quietly. His journey had just begun. Back in the village, things were falling apart for Madame Rosaline and the rest of the family. Years of poor decisions, unnecessary spending, and constant borrowing had finally caught up with them. The small family businesses they relied on had collapsed, and the bills kept piling up. Creditors visited the house almost every week, shouting and threatening. The same house they once bragged about had now become a reminder of their failures. Madame Rosaline tried to hide the situation from the community, but everyone could see the decline. With no other option, the family sat together one evening and made a painful decision. They would sell the ancestral house, the same house where Ikenna had been insulted, rejected, and told he didn't belong. Madame Rosaline insisted there was no choice. They needed the money to pay off debts and survive. Even though selling the house felt like losing a piece of their identity, desperation pushed them forward. But selling it wasn't as easy as they thought. News spread quickly, and potential buyers became cautious. The property had land boundary disputes with neighbors, and many people feared getting into legal trouble. Some buyers backed out at the last minute, while others negotiated shockingly low prices. The family grew even more frustrated as weeks passed without progress. Madame Rosaline began to panic, fearing they might lose everything before finding a buyer. One afternoon, a distant relative named Chimazi, who had always liked Ikenna, heard about the sale during a village meeting. He knew how badly Ikenna had been treated in that same house. Something in him felt the young man deserved to know. He didn't want anyone to accuse him of hiding the news later, so he reached out quietly. He found Ikenna's business contact online and saved his number. Late that night he sent a message, I know it's been long, but I have something important to tell you. Your aunt and the family are selling the house. Things are bad here. I thought you should know. Ikenna read the message slowly. For a moment he didn't know how to react. A mix of emotions washed over him. Old pain, shock, and something else he didn't expect. Opportunity. The same house that rejected him was now on the market. He sat back in his chair, thinking deeply. His story was taking a turn he never saw coming. Ikenna didn't hesitate after reading the message. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. Instead of calling the family or asking questions, he contacted his lawyer the next morning. He instructed him to purchase the house quietly under the name of one of his companies. He didn't want anyone to suspect a thing. The lawyer handled every detail, negotiations, documents, payments, while Ikenna stayed far away, watching everything unfold from his office in Port Harcourt. The family, desperate for money, accepted the offer quickly. To them, it felt like a miracle that a wealthy buyer appeared when they needed one the most. When the payment cleared, the family celebrated loudly. Madame Rosaline danced around the compound, thanking God for sending a savior. None of them knew that the real savior was the same boy she once pushed away, the one she said wasn't part of the family. They talked excitedly about their plans, how they would settle debts and start fresh. They praised the unknown buyer without realizing he was someone they had rejected for years. A few days later, the lawyer finalized the transfer. The house legally belonged to Ikenna. Only then did he decide it was time to return. Not with anger, not with noise, but with quiet strength. On the morning he chose to visit, he drove into the village with a full convoy of cars. The sound of engines made neighbors peek out of their windows. Children ran after the vehicles, shocked by the grand arrival. The family members rushed outside, confused and curious about who the important visitor might be. But confusion turned to shock when Ikenna stepped out of the lead SUV. Dressed confidently, and looking like a man who had built his own life, Madame Rosaline froze. Her face went pale, her hands shaking as she stared at him. It felt like the world stopped for her. She didn't expect to ever see him walk back into that compound. Definitely not like this. Ikenna didn't shout or smile triumphantly. He simply reached into his folder and handed her the official documents. In a calm voice he said, "I came for my house." She scanned the papers with trembling fingers and saw the truth. The new owner was Ikenna. The same boy she once pushed away now owned the home she thought he didn't deserve to enter. Madame Rosaline's hands shook as she held the documents. Her eyes moved from the papers to Ikenna's calm face, and suddenly the reality hit her harder than any insult she had ever thrown at him. Her voice broke as she stepped closer, tears gathering quickly. "Ikenna, please, we are family," she whispered, her pride collapsing in front of everyone. The same neighbors who once saw her shout at him now watched in silence as she begged the boy she once rejected. Ikenna didn't move. He didn't raise his voice or remind her of every painful word she ever said. He simply looked at her with the same quiet strength that had carried him through his hardest days. In a gentle voice he replied, "You said I wasn't part of this family. Now I own the home that rejected me." His words were not meant to hurt. They were the truth she could no longer escape from. She fell to her knees, sobbing loudly, holding the edge of his shirt like someone drowning. Other relatives tried to speak, but the shame on their faces kept their words locked in their throats. They knew they had all treated him unfairly. They knew they had pushed him out, and now the boy they dismissed had returned as the owner of everything they thought they controlled. But Ikenna didn't let anger guide him. He didn't shout or insult them. His quietness was more powerful than any revenge. It made them realize how badly they had failed him. His silence was the mirror that showed them their own cruelty. He took a deep breath and told them calmly, "I'm not here to disgrace anyone. I just came to claim what is now mine." His voice carried no bitterness, only dignity. Then he surprised everyone by giving them time to pack their things. He didn't force them out immediately or call the police. Instead, he allowed them to gather their belongings respectfully, without humiliation. Even in that moment, he showed more maturity than they had ever shown him. As they carried their bags out of the compound, many avoided his eyes, too ashamed to speak. Madame Rosaline cried quietly, realizing she had lost more than a house. She had lost someone who could have been family if she had treated him with kindness. And for Ikenna, that moment wasn't about revenge. It was closure. It was justice delivered without cruelty. After the family moved out, the compound sat silent for a few days. Ikenna walked through the empty room slowly, touching the old walls that once echoed with insults and rejection. But instead of bitterness, he felt a quiet sense of direction. He didn't want the house to remain a place of pain. He wanted it to become something meaningful. So he called a construction team and began a full renovation. The cracked walls were repaired, the leaking roof replaced, and the dusty rooms transformed into bright, modern spaces. Within months, the house that once made him feel unwanted became a beautiful innovation center filled with computers, tools, and learning stations. He hired skilled trainers, many of them young people he had once mentored, and set up programs for coding, repairs, graphic design, and basic tech skills. Children from the village came running into the compound every morning with excitement, holding their notebooks and sitting behind screens they never imagined they would touch. Ikenna watched them learn, laugh, and dream, seeing reflections of the boy he once was in their hopeful faces. The same compound where he was pushed aside now welcomed dozens of youths every day, giving them opportunities he never had. Parents in the community admired his vision. Leaders praised his generosity. But for Ikenna, it wasn't about praise. It was about breaking cycles of rejection, poverty, and wasted potential. He stood in the doorway one afternoon, watching the children typing on keyboards and fixing devices with small, focused hands. A trainer was explaining something, and the kids listened with bright eyes. In that moment, everything felt full circle. He had turned pain into purpose. As the camera in the final scene slowly zooms out, his voice plays softly in the background. They said I wasn't part of the family, but I built a home for a new generation. Children run across the yard laughing, the sunlight touching the freshly painted walls. The house no longer holds memories of humiliation, only hope and possibilities. The screen slowly fades to black, showing his final message in bold letters. Rejection doesn't break destiny, it shapes it. It becomes clear that Ikenna didn't just win. He transformed, and he turned the very place that hurt him into a place that heals others.